Well, welcome to the journey. My name is Kevin Polky, and I am the host of the journey. And as many of you have heard me speak over the last few years on the journey, um, we have a good fortune a lot of the times to be able to have guests that come on and talk about their stories of transformation and how they had some type of setback in their life and what they learned as they were working through that setback. Um, and then what they learned about themselves so that they can then move into the process of either a different career, a different interest, a new lease on how they were doing their life or relationship or whatever it may be. But the idea that the setback was an opportunity, the obstacles was an opportunity, and what were the things that they learned about themselves to grow and develop and then give back to others, give back to their community. And then we have opportunities to do reflections. And today is going to be one of those reflections. I have had the opportunity by a lot of primarily school districts, but a lot of individuals reaching out, wanting me to come in and do a workshop uh, regarding how to manage stress and develop resilience. And I want to share with you one of the things that I start that particular talk with, and it's this idea of what if. What if inviting you into this possibility? What if there's no such thing as darkness? Some of you go, come on, Kevin, I've been in the middle of the night, been somewhere where there is no light pollution, and I know what darkness is. What if there was no such thing as darkness? There was just an absence of light. If that's possible, what if there's no such thing as cold? There's just an absence of heat. If those two things are possible, what if what if we were all on this continuum? What if on this continuum that to the far left is the brightest of bright lights, and if we go to the far right, at the very far end of the right hand side of the continuum is the complete absence of light. That we are somewhere in this continuum. See, I believe that each and every one of us, regardless of circumstances, regardless of where in the world we're born, what time we're born, who the individuals, our parents, that when we're conceived, at the moment of that miracle called conception, not only is life born and life is created at that moment, but there also is something that happens with association of that life being beginning as a result of that conception. There is this light that happens, and for some, that light may represent love. It may represent God. It may represent uh, energy. Maybe all those things are the same. This idea that each and every one of us, regardless of circumstance, regardless of how the conception happened, we are all at that moment that life begins within us, is also at that moment where that light also is placed. And that no matter what we do, that light cannot go out. that that light cannot be extinguished. So similar to the idea that what if there's no such thing as darkness, there's just an absence of light, or no such thing as coldness, just an absence of heat. I think it is more like being on that continuum. True that today in our society, it is heavily encouraged and promoted that we're all supposed to be at the far left end of the continuum. Go to a social media post and follow influencers and different people like that, and they're all talking about this is how you should be, and this is the ideal because this is how I am. But I don't believe that is very realistic at all. I don't believe that is how life really is. I think it's much more moving up and down this continuum based upon how we wake up and what may be going on, how our body feels, the people we interact with, the thoughts that we have, that we move up and down this continuum, that when sometimes people have a series of different things happen in their life, they have had trauma happen in their life, certain setbacks happen in their life that they're not addressing, there may then be a predisposition to being in that darkness. And in that, that they may then have a perception that this is how life is and how life will always be. Similar to when we're in the light, we see things in the brightest of bright lights. We see things more clearly for what they're not and what they are. Where when we're in the dark, it also influences our perception and has this negative, pessimistic, half empty, fear-based, scarcity-driven language. It'll always be this way. It's never going to get better. Yeah, that'll work for other people, but not me. That is where that hopelessness and despair happens when we're in the darkest of dark. But if it's true what I said, that we're all born with that light within us, and there's nothing that we can do to have that light extinguish or remove. True, there are certain things that can eclipse that light. And it may very well be perceived just like when we have a full eclipse of the sun, it may appear to be dark, even though it's supposed to be daylight out. For me, I think the primary thing that is going to eclipse that light for me is events that happen in my life and my perception, my narrative that I then talk about those things. Things that have happened or things that I project will happen into the future. There is from the Jewish part of the Bible, the Jew I can talk Judo Christian part of the Old Testament in Psalms. The author in Psalms 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Maybe you could change that and say, "Be still and know that I am light." Or maybe it could be translated as, "Be still and know that I am love." I think in my experience that when I go into a meditative state, when I have done some stretching and I release certain muscles, then my mind then follows. And then I can be able to see from a broader perspective. I'm able to see through that lens of that love of God, of that light. And that whatever I may have, the story that I may have been telling myself prior to that, may have a different perspective. My default is to go into my thinking of what if or why, and how I end up taking that on. That seems to be my practice default. But the more I practice being still and being in that space, that light, owning that, letting that light within me illuminate, the more that I have a broader perspective. Maybe it allows me to take in consideration someone else's perspective and not making it just about me. Maybe it allows me to see where something, what appears to be lost, can be found, or how something that could be an obstacle could then be an opportunity. Again, for a long, long time, I had practiced over and over again the what if, the mindset of scarcity, the mindset of dualistic thinking. As I began to practice and be intentional about non-dualistic thinking, about being in that light, to think more about abundance, and that is really what was intended for me all along, and to experience that. It takes a lot of practice and continually going back to that. And then when I have a setback, when I have a relapse or a default in my thinking, to notice it and then bring myself back to being still and knowing that God is within me, knowing that that light is within me, knowing from a standpoint of that's not intellectually knowing, but knowing from an experience, having had the experience of that light being within. So the invitation that I would have for you is that regardless of how you go into that space, maybe it'd be walking outside, maybe it'd be reading something and then putting yourself in a quiet, meditative place and reflecting. Maybe it'd be writing, maybe it'd be interacting with somebody, and then sitting back and reflecting on that. That whatever that is that works for you, or maybe practicing a couple different things to find out what works for you, or a couple different ways that do work for you, I would invite you to maybe first start off with once a week to a couple times a week, to that when you start incorporating that into a regular basis, even a daily basis. Maybe starting off your day and ending your day that way. And starting off your day and finding yourself sometime in the middle of the day to be able to go to that space, and then later in the day. However, you start building that practice, I think it's important for us to continue to practice that idea that that light is within us. And if we can practice being still and reflecting on knowing that that light is within us, that love is within us, that God is within us, that we can't be separated from it, we can just feel like we're separated from it. As always, I appreciate you listening and being here. And if there is someone, as you're reflecting and meditating, that you think could benefit from this, please share it and pass it along with them. As always, I appreciate you being here and look forward to being with you next week.